A black woman was humiliated at the shooting range not until her final shot surpassed the highest target. It was on a Tuesday morning when Maya arrived at the training ground. Little did she know that she would soon face the most embarrassing moment of her life. She never saw it coming. Before we continue, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel as we dish out fresh, engaging stories daily. Enjoy the story. The bus that carried her to the military base was filled with nervous chatter, mostly from the young men who would soon begin their training. Maya, however, sat in silence, her thoughts drowning out the noise around her. Her heart raced, though she kept her composure. She had been preparing for this moment for years, but as the bus came to a stop and the doors swung open, doubt crept in. She had seen the looks, heard the whispers before she even stepped off the bus. Maya had learned to ignore the stares, the judgment. Yet today, she couldn't shake the feeling. What would they think of her? Would they look past her beauty and see the Marine within her, or would they judge her based on her appearance alone? As she stood up and adjusted her uniform, Maya couldn't help but feel the weight of the stares. She was tall, strikingly beautiful, and radiated confidence. But the glances she received from the men around her weren't the kind of admiration she was used to. It wasn't awe or respect. They saw her beauty, and nothing more. To them, that was a weakness, not a strength. The harsh reality hit her as the boots of the soldiers clapped against the pavement. They were sizing her up before she even had a chance to speak. Is she even going to make it? One man muttered under his breath, just loud enough for her to catch the words. His voice dripped with disbelief. The very idea of her being there seemed absurd to him. Another soldier, taller with a smug grin, chuckled. She's probably here because she looks good in that uniform, he remarked, as though it was an obvious fact. The others laughed along, reinforcing the stereotype that beauty was her ticket here, not skill, not hard work. Maya felt the sting of their words, the heat of their judgment burning against her skin. But she didn't let it show. She held her head high and walked with purpose, stepping off the bus and into the world that would test her in ways she never imagined. She wasn't here to impress anyone with her appearance. She was here to prove herself as a Marine. As she made her way toward the registration desk, the whispers grew louder. She won't last a day, one soldier remarked, his voice dripping with certainty. Another added, what do you think she's going to do? Play the pretty Marine while the rest of us break our backs. Maya's fists clenched, her jaw tightened, but she refused to respond. Instead, she focused on the task ahead. She had heard it all before. From childhood, when people doubted her because of her skin color or her gender, to now, her entire life had been one long battle against stereotypes. But nothing could have prepared her for the weight of judgment she was facing now. In this moment, it wasn't just her race or her gender that was being questioned. It was her identity as a Marine. The very essence of who she was being reduced to nothing more than a pretty face. But Maya had learned that people's opinions didn't define her. She stood in line for registration, her posture straight, her expression calm. She focused on the form in front of her, pushing the noise aside. The soldiers around her shuffled impatiently, eager to get through the process and start the grueling training that awaited them. But Maya couldn't ignore the glares. She knew they were sizing her up, already deciding her fate. The officer at the registration desk barely glanced up as Maya approached. His eyes scanned her papers, uninterested in who she was as a person. He handed her another form without a second thought, like she was nothing more than another name on a piece of paper. His indifference stung, but Maya swallowed the bitterness that rose in her throat. She wasn't here for his approval. As she walked away, the murmurs followed her. The men still spoke in hushed tones, sharing their opinions on how long she'd last, how quickly she'd quit, how she wasn't fit for this life. The words felt like knives in her back, but they couldn't touch her. She had faced worse before. She had learned long ago that the only opinion that truly mattered was her own. Later that day, Maya found herself standing at the edge of a grueling physical fitness test, where her endurance would be tested beyond limits. The other soldiers eyed her with thinly veiled amusement, their skepticism evident. The first few minutes of the test felt like a slow-motion replay of everything she had ever feared. As she began, her movements were slower, more calculated than the rest. She could hear their snickers, the low chuckles of those who thought she didn't belong. One soldier, a cocky man known for his fast times, laughed loudly, his voice cutting through the air. "You're really going to make it through this?" he called out, his tone dripping with mockery. Maya's face hardened. She knew what they thought of her, and for a moment, she almost believed it herself. But she didn't have the luxury of self-doubt. She stumbled once, her feet faltering under the weight of the challenge, and the soldiers' laughter grew louder. Maya could feel their eyes on her, the burning, judgmental gaze of those who didn't believe she had what it took. But she wasn't about to back down. She had prepared for this. She wasn't going to let their doubts break her. With every step, every breath, Maya pushed herself harder. The pain in her muscles was nothing compared to the fire in her chest. She wasn't just fighting for survival in this training exercise. She was fighting for her respect, fighting to show the world. And more importantly, herself. That beauty didn't define her. Her strength was her own. Later that evening, Maya sat in the barracks, away from the noise of the other soldiers. She opened a small envelope that she had carried with her, a letter from her father, Major Briggs. She had read it dozens of times, but tonight, it felt different. Her father had been a decorated war hero, known for his courage and integrity, and it was his legacy that had shaped Maya into the woman she was today. As a child, Maya had spent countless hours with her father, learning everything from military tactics to the mental discipline that was required of a Marine. His lessons had shaped her into the warrior she was, and now, as she read his words again, she realized something. It wasn't about proving herself to anyone else. It was about honoring his legacy, about pushing herself to be better than she ever thought possible. She wiped a tear from her eye, steadying her breath. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. But she was ready. The sound of boots hitting the concrete echoed through the shooting range as Maya stepped up to the firing line. The air was thick with tension, thick enough that she could almost taste it. Around her, the men from earlier whispered among themselves, their skepticism palpable in the air. These soldiers had seen her stumble through the physical test, seen her fail, according to their standards. To them, Maya was still the same fragile woman who had no place among them. They had no idea what they were about to witness. Maya's eyes moved over the targets in front of her, the sharp green of the range contrasting against the stark white of the paper targets. She adjusted the grip on her rifle, her fingers tightening around the cold metal. Her breath was steady, each inhale measured, each exhale deep. She had spent countless hours on ranges like this one, back when her father, Major Briggs, would bring her to military training sites. His lessons had drilled the importance of focus into her, an almost meditative stillness that allowed her to shut out the distractions and noise of the world. But today, that noise was unavoidable. The whispers from the soldiers behind her grew louder as she lifted the rifle to her shoulder. She ignored them. She was used to the judgments, the assumptions based on her beauty, her gender, her race. None of it mattered. The only thing that mattered now was the target in front of her and the rifle in her hands. Her first shot rang out. It was swift, precise, but it missed the mark. A low chuckle echoed from behind her. "She's going to have a hard time with this," one of the men muttered, just loud enough for her to hear. Maya didn't flinch. She didn't let it faze her. Instead, she took a deep breath, adjusted her stance, and aimed again. The weight of the weapon settled in her hands, the rifle's cold barrel aligned with the target in front of her. Her fingers were steady, her arms firm but not rigid. She squeezed the trigger gently. The shot rang out again. This time, it was closer. The target had been grazed, just barely within the outer ring of the bullseye. A slight murmur of surprise escaped the crowd, but the doubts were still there. Maya wasn't out of the woods yet. The laughter from the back of the room hadn't stopped, though it had become more subdued. They still didn't believe. They still saw her as the pretty, fragile recruit, out of place in this world of bullets and sweat. But Maya remained calm. She adjusted her breathing once more, tuning out the noise around her. Her eyes narrowed, her focus sharpening. She had trained for this. She had trained for moments like these, moments where others would expect her to fail. The next shot was better. Her bullet hit the target with more force, inching closer to the center. The tension in the room grew thicker. The soldiers' eyes flicked back and forth, unsure of what to make of this unexpected turn. Maya was proving something. They could feel it, even if they weren't ready to admit it yet. But Maya wasn't concerned with their reactions. She didn't need their approval. The only approval she needed was her own. She had something to prove, and it wasn't to the men watching her. It was to herself. The final shot was looming, and with it, the possibility of redemption. Maya's heart was steady, her mind clear. She could feel the weight of the rifle in her hands, its power. But it wasn't just about power. It was about control. She exhaled slowly, aligning the sights of the rifle with the bullseye. Her entire body seemed to fall into a trance, the only thing existing in her world being the target in front of her and the rifle she held. Every muscle was poised. Every thought in her mind was focused. She squeezed the trigger, feeling the recoil of the shot reverberate through her arms, but she kept her stance solid. The shot rang out, and for a moment, there was silence. Then, the room erupted in disbelief. Maya's bullet had hit the bullseye, the center of the target, and it didn't just hit it. It surpassed the highest target on the board. The shot was perfect, a testament to her skill and precision. The soldiers behind her stood frozen, staring in stunned silence. The laughter, the whispers, the judgment, it all faded away in that one moment. They had underestimated her, written her off as just another recruit who couldn't handle the heat. But Maya had just proven them wrong. She stood there, her chest rising and falling with steady breaths, her gaze fixed on the target in front of her. The crowd remained silent, the noise from earlier now replaced by a heavy stillness. Maya's face remained calm, not a hint of smugness or gloating. She didn't need to rub their faces in it. Her victory was quiet, powerful, and it spoke volumes. It was her skill that had done the talking, not her beauty, not her gender, and certainly not their expectations. Slowly, Maya lowered her rifle and turned to face the soldiers who had doubted her. They stood there, their expressions blank, trying to comprehend what they had just witnessed. One by one, they looked away, avoiding eye contact with her. Maya didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Her performance on the shooting range had already said everything she needed to say. She had proven herself in a way that no one could ignore. In that moment, she had shown the world that beauty wasn't a weakness. It was a strength. She wasn't just another recruit. She wasn't just a woman in a man's world. She was Maya, and she was a force to be reckoned with. As the whispers began to fade and the silence turned to murmurs of respect, Maya allowed herself a small, quiet smile. It wasn't for them. It was for her. Because in that moment, she knew she had earned something far more valuable than respect. She had earned her own belief in herself. The air was thick with tension as Maya stepped off the shooting range. She could feel the weight of the soldiers' stares on her back, their judgment still lingering in the air, thick as smoke. Her hands, though steady as she lowered the rifle, trembled ever so slightly. It wasn't from the adrenaline. It wasn't from the power of the shot she had just made. It was from the quiet anticipation that pulsed through the room. In that moment, Maya knew things had changed. But she wasn't sure if they had changed for the better. The mocking whispers still swirled in the background, a hum of disbelief. She had just hit the bullseye, her final shot surpassing the highest target on the board, but the soldiers didn't know how to respond. They had seen the first few shots, the misses, the near hits, and they had written her off. Now, in the silence that followed, they were grappling with something they didn't know how to handle. A woman who had proven them wrong, a black woman at that. Maya could feel their eyes on her, but she kept walking, her posture straight, her steps deliberate. But then, as she turned to head back toward the barracks, she heard the unmistakable sound of boots echoing behind her. Maya, it was a voice she recognized, a voice that had been a part of the chorus of doubt earlier that day. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The tone was sharp, a mixture of discomfort and reluctance. It was the same soldier who had mocked her at the beginning of the day, the one who had laughed when she stumbled during the physical fitness test. His name was Greg, a tall man with a cocky grin and a swagger that came from years of knowing that others looked at him as the benchmark for success. Maya had noticed the way he sized her up earlier, the way his eyes lingered a little too long on her body when she walked past. She had heard his words echoing in her mind even as she made her way through the test, his doubts pushing her to prove him wrong. Now, here he was again, this time with a different energy, a nervousness she could feel even without looking. Maya didn't stop walking, but she turned her head slightly, her eyes narrowing as she glanced at him over her shoulder. She didn't need to speak. She didn't need to say anything. Her presence alone made it clear she wasn't afraid of whatever he had to say. Greg caught up to her, his footsteps tentative now. He stopped just a few paces behind her, his gaze not quite meeting hers. Maya could see the discomfort in his posture, the way he shuffled his feet as if trying to avoid her gaze. For a moment, they stood there in silence, the sounds of the bass continuing in the background, but neither of them acknowledging the noise. "So," Greg began, his voice trailing off as if unsure how to approach the situation. "How did you do it?" Maya's lips parted slightly, but she didn't rush to answer. She was quiet for a long moment, feeling his hesitation, sensing the weight of the question that hovered between them. He had seen her shot. He had seen her defy every expectation he and the others had for her. She didn't need to explain how she did it. The question was less about the technicality of the shot and more about the personal challenge Greg had failed to understand. How could a woman like Maya, someone who, in his mind, didn't belong, perform so well? "Why are you asking me this?" Maya asked softly, her voice calm, unshaken. She didn't need to confront him the way he had once confronted her. Her confidence had shifted. She had moved past the need to prove herself to anyone. Greg shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting away, trying to collect his thoughts. "I mean, after everything I said, everything we all said, how did you manage that?" Maya took a deep breath, the cool air filling her lungs as she steadied herself. She had faced these kinds of questions her whole life. Questions about her worth, her ability, her place in spaces she was told she didn't belong. But here, in this moment, she realized something. She didn't need to explain herself anymore. She didn't need to justify who she was or what she could do. She had already done it. The shot had proven it. She turned to face Greg fully, her eyes locking onto his with an unwavering gaze. "I'm not here to prove anything to you," she said, her words firm, cutting through the air like a blade. "I'm here to prove it to myself." There was a pause. Greg's jaw tightened slightly, his frustration mounting as he struggled to find the right words. Maya, however, didn't flinch. She held her ground, not backing down, but not seeking confrontation either. She knew now that she had nothing left to prove. "I don't care what you or anyone else thinks about me," she continued. "I came here for a reason, and I've earned my place, no matter what you say." The tension between them was thick, a battle of wills in a moment that should have been insignificant. Yet for Greg, it was everything. He stood there, caught between the reality of his own preconceived notions and the undeniable truth that Maya had proven herself to be exactly what he and the others had doubted. Finally, Greg took a step back, his expression a mixture of disbelief and reluctant respect. "You've got guts," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll give you that." Maya nodded once, a slight curve of a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. She didn't need his approval, but this moment, this acknowledgement, meant something. It was a shift in perception, a turning point not just for her, but for him and everyone else who had doubted her. The challenge wasn't over, not by a long shot, but she had won this round. "Thanks," she said, her voice calm but laced with a quiet strength. She didn't wait for him to say more. She turned and walked away, her steps purposeful, her head high. As she walked, she could feel the eyes of the other soldiers on her. The whispers, once filled with skepticism and doubt, had started to change. They weren't loud, but they were different now. There was a shift in the way they looked at her, a silent acknowledgement of her skill, her strength, and her resolve. The next day, Maya and the soldiers were thrust into a team exercise. The mission was simple enough in theory: navigate through a set of obstacles and reach the designated endpoint before time ran out. The soldiers had been split into smaller teams, and Maya found herself working alongside Greg and a few others who had doubted her abilities. At first, the mission seemed like any other. The group moved forward, following the predetermined path through the obstacle course. But as they approached the final stretch, disaster struck. A soldier, not paying enough attention, triggered a trap. An unexpected shift in the ground sent him stumbling and nearly collapsing into a dangerous ravine. The group froze, unsure of what to do next. The seconds ticked by, tension growing thicker as panic started to set in. Without missing a beat, Maya's instincts kicked in. She darted forward, assessing the situation in an instant. She knew the terrain, she knew what had to be done, and she knew exactly how to save their teammate. With a calmness that left the others in awe, she reached the edge of the ravine, offering her hand to the struggling soldier. "Grab on," she commanded, her voice clear and authoritative. The soldier took her hand, and with one strong pull, Maya helped him back to safety. It wasn't just the physical strength she demonstrated, but her leadership and quick thinking that saved the day. The team was shaken, but they were safe. And as the mission concluded, Greg, who had watched the entire scene unfold, walked up to Maya. He placed a hand on her shoulder, a rare gesture of respect. "You've earned your spot," he said quietly. Maya nodded, her eyes meeting his with a steady gaze. She didn't need to say anything. In that moment, the respect she had longed for had been given, not in words, but in actions. She had proven herself, not just as a Marine, but as an invaluable asset to the team. The shift was complete. Maya wasn't just another recruit. She was a leader, a force, and she had earned her place among the best. And for the first time since she had arrived, she felt like she truly belonged. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the vast training grounds. The air was thick with the smell of earth and sweat, a testament to the grueling exercise that awaited them. Maya stood at the edge of the base, her eyes scanning the horizon, the weight of the final test heavy on her shoulders. This wasn't just another drill. This was the culmination of everything she had worked for, every challenge she had overcome, and every doubt that had been cast her way. The final survival mission would test everything she had learned in the Marines. It would push her beyond her physical limits and challenge her mind in ways she hadn't imagined. There was no room for mistakes. This mission wasn't about the perfect shot or the quickest time. This was about endurance, about making decisions under pressure, about staying calm when everything around you was falling apart. Maya glanced at the other soldiers around her. They were tense, their faces serious, eyes scanning the instructions they had just been given. This wasn't just a test of their physical abilities. It was a test of their mental toughness, their ability to think on their feet, and to make quick decisions in life-or-death situations. She knew it was going to be tough, but she was ready. She had faced worse, endured more. The mission briefing was simple, yet the stakes were high. Maya and her team had to navigate through a series of obstacles, find their way through a dense forest, cross a treacherous ravine, and reach a designated extraction point within a set time frame. They would have limited resources, just a map, a compass, a few basic supplies, and the knowledge of their training. There would be no backup, no second chances. The sound of a horn signaled the start of the mission. The team fell into formation, Maya at the front, instinctively taking charge. She had proven herself in countless drills before, but this was different. It wasn't just about making it through the course. It was about leading the team, making the right decisions when everything was on the line. The others in the group looked at her with a mix of respect and uncertainty. Some had come to see her as a capable Marine, while others still weren't sure if she could handle the pressure. As they moved deeper into the forest, Maya felt the weight of every step. The ground was uneven, the brush thick with undergrowth, and the air was humid, making each breath feel heavier than the last. But Maya's mind was sharp, her focus unwavering. Every obstacle they encountered, every decision they had to make, she led them with confidence. She had spent years training for this moment, years developing the mental toughness and the tactical skills needed to survive in hostile conditions. The first obstacle came quickly, a steep incline, slick with rainwater, leading up to a narrow ridge. The soldiers behind Maya hesitated, unsure of how to approach the climb. She could see their uncertainty, feel the doubt in their gaze. It was a difficult climb, no doubt, but it wasn't impossible. "Let me go first," Maya said, her voice calm and authoritative. Without waiting for an answer, she started the climb, her hands finding purchase on the jagged rocks as she pulled herself up. The team followed, each one trying to keep up with Maya's pace, but some struggled more than others. Maya moved with a fluid grace, her body perfectly in sync with the rhythm of the climb. As she neared the top, her heart raced not from exertion, but from the quiet realization that she was doing it. She was leading them. She was proving, once again, that she belonged here. The men behind her, once doubtful and dismissive, were now looking to her for guidance, for reassurance. Maya didn't give them a moment to dwell on their fears. She reached the top, turned, and offered her hand to the others. One by one, the soldiers made it to the top, and Maya led them forward. She didn't say much, she didn't need to. Her actions spoke louder than any words. She was proving herself, not just as a Marine, but as a leader. And in that moment, the soldiers who had once doubted her saw something they hadn't before, the quiet strength of a woman who had earned her place. The next obstacle was the ravine, a deep, rocky chasm that split the landscape in two. There was a narrow bridge made of ropes and wooden planks that crossed it, but it was weathered and unstable. Maya knew they had to cross it, but it would take more than just physical strength. It would take nerves of steel. The team stood at the edge, looking down into the ravine, their eyes wide with fear. Some of them hesitated, stepping back from the edge, unsure of how to proceed. Maya knew that they couldn't waste time. The clock was ticking. The extraction point was still miles away, and every second they spent here was a second they could never get back. "Focus," she said, her voice calm but firm. "One step at a time. Stay low, stay steady. I'll go first." Without waiting for a response, she moved forward, stepping onto the bridge. The wood creaked under her weight, but she didn't falter. She took one step after another, her eyes fixed on the other side of the ravine. The sound of her boots hitting the wood echoed in the silence, but she didn't look down. She didn't think about how high she was. She didn't think about the fear that threatened to rise in her chest. All that mattered was crossing that bridge. When she reached the other side, she turned and offered her hand to the next soldier. One by one, they crossed, each soldier looking to her for guidance, for reassurance. And with each passing moment, Maya proved that she wasn't just a capable Marine. She was the heart of the team. It wasn't until they reached the final stretch of the mission that the real test began. They had to navigate through a dense patch of forest, avoiding hidden traps, while keeping an eye on the clock. The extraction point was close, but it felt so far away. Every decision counted. Every move they made could mean the difference between success and failure. The tension was palpable as the team pushed forward. Maya's mind raced, weighing every option, considering every possibility. She could feel the weight of the decisions she had to make, but she knew there was no room for hesitation. The critical moment came when they encountered a trap. A snare hidden under a pile of leaves, designed to trap anyone who wasn't paying attention. One of the soldiers, distracted by the pressure of the mission, stepped right into it, his leg caught in the rope. He let out a cry of pain as the snare pulled tight. Without hesitation, Maya sprang into action. She dropped to her knees beside him, her eyes scanning the area. She knew they couldn't waste any time here. The extraction point was close, but it was still too far to risk losing more time. "Stay still," Maya commanded, her voice steady and clear. She pulled out her knife, cutting through the rope with quick, precise movements. She didn't look at the soldier's face, didn't hesitate for a second. Every movement was deliberate, every action calculated. She freed him, helped him back to his feet, and without a word, she gestured for the team to keep moving. They pushed forward, the extraction point now in sight. Maya led them through the final stretch, her mind focused, her body moving with the rhythm of the mission. As they crossed the final threshold, the sound of helicopters filled the air, the roar of the blades growing louder as the team reached the designated point. Exhausted but victorious, Maya and her team boarded the helicopter, the doors closing behind them. Maya glanced around at the soldiers who had been with her on this journey. They were tired, their faces etched with the struggle of the mission, but they were alive. They had made it. And they had made it because Maya had led them. There was no need for words. The look in their eyes, the nod of respect from the men who had once doubted her, was all the validation she needed. She had earned her place among them. She had proven herself, not just through her skill, but through the strength of her spirit. As the helicopter lifted off the ground, Maya sat back in her seat, her mind racing, but her heart steady. She wasn't just another recruit anymore. She was a seasoned Marine, forged through struggle and respect. And when she looked out the window, watching the base grow smaller beneath her, she knew that her journey had only just begun. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories coming your way. Drop your thought in the comments about what you feel of this story, and rate the story on a scale of 1 to 10. Also, let us know where you are watching from, as we would love to know how far our stories reach all over the world. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.